Yeah, or you want to do an introduction, or you want me to start?
Maybe I'll just say welcome to everybody. Just so everybody knows, I am recording the session. So if you want it afterwards or you need to review something, I will be sharing that after. So my name is Christy, and I am representing ESPORG in this setting. And I just want to welcome everybody. And we have one of our associated members, NOMAD Power, here to talk about charging infrastructure at truck parking areas, which is a big topic, a really big topic, especially as we move more into sustainable energy, which the Commission is also starting to place more and more importance on. So we're very, very excited to have Hans here today. All right, then Hans, if it's okay, I'm gonna let you take the floor.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for your kind introduction, Christy. Good morning, all of you, from a slightly cold Rotterdam this morning. Thanks all for joining this webinar. My name is Hans Bevers, and I'm the CEO of NOMAD Power. And NOMAD Power has been building a truck and trailer charging network, a European charging network over the last years, and we're heavily involved in expanding this network. We recently joined at the ESPORG family, and so in effect this will be our first introduction to you, and I'm very grateful for that. Timing-wise, I think we've got scheduled 1 hour. Presentation hopefully will take about half an hour, and then there's time for questions and answers afterwards. And if needed, I've got more time after that hour, but we will try to wrap up within 1 hour. Let me try to get the presentation up, and then we'll start session now.
And while Hans is putting the presentation up, I just want to encourage everybody that if you do have questions, to wait till the very end, and you can either say them or you can put them in the chat box, and I will help field the questions. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Hopefully, you can see all the presentation.
Perfect.
So let me take you on the journey of the energy transition, but also the implication for the commercial road transport, and ultimately what you of course are interested in as a truck park operator, the implications for you. If you look at sort of electrification, it's a really big topic, and we all have heard about the Fit for 55, the EU package to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which was sort of launched last year and will be sort of within law this year. Here you see a quote from Transport and Environment, stating trucks account for less than 2% of the vehicles on the road, but 22% of CO2 emissions from road transport. In one way, you could look at this quote and say, like, wow, these vehicles are really polluting, and what do we need to do about it? But you could also see this quote as an opportunity, because if you are the EU Commission and you look at this, you could also see this as an opportunity, like, okay, I only need to make sure that 2% of all the vehicles on the road are sort of electrified, and then I tackle 22% of the CO2 emissions, the total CO2 emissions from road transport. And that is, I think, what is important. So I think the EU Commission has a sort of a real challenge here, because electrification of trucks is not an easy thing. But if they are successful in that, they can sort of reduce a huge amount of CO2 emission in one go. And so I would really see this as an opportunity. If you look more specifically at the charging at truck parks, you could see that there are two possible applications. One is more of a current demand related to refrigeration trailers, and one is more of a future demand relating to electric trucks. But both of these applications could really be turned in a commercial model for you as a truck park operator. And if you look at the truck parks at the moment, the reality is that there's not an awful lot of these sockets available. If you almost think about it, most truck parks, the only sockets you will find is probably to have your to have the men's changing room, and where you find electricity sockets for your shaving device. So in a way, there's still a long road to go here. But the good thing is that we are very much at the beginning of this. So I will just like to sort of to see how it can be done, and also to point out that it's certainly not too late. If I look at if we look at those two aspects, then I would like to start with the future demand and explain a little bit more about electric trucks. And the journey which we think will be relevant there. So the e-truck charging we see currently as a future demand, but really as an accelerating demand for e-trucks. I think I want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, there has been a discussion about whether commercial road transport, whether that should really go the route of electrification, or whether it should be hydrogen in this. If you look at this particular graph, then you see that electrification is the most direct way towards sort of the energy transition for trucks. If you look at, for example, the way hydrogen is produced, you need awful lot of electricity for this, and it is not a very efficient way ultimately to really go from well to tank and tank to wheel, as you can see in this graph. So what's more and more being clear is that for the hydrogen way can be much better used for alternative fuels within the fuel aviation industry and the commercial shipping industry, and that electrification will be used for or personal road transports like cars, light commercial vehicles, but also for trucks. And that has become quite clear. And somebody who's really understood that in industry is actually the OEMs, the truck manufacturers. They have really sort of embraced the electrification of trucks by introducing all kinds of models, electric models. And the more, and every time you open the papers, you see almost a new model being introduced there. So they really embraced this, and therefore I think it will also be much easier ultimately to see the electrifications for truck as the main winner instead of hydrogen. What we see at the same time, and I always think about that when you first had your first mobile phone, there was a battery life of sort of 1 hour, and that you had to charge it again, and things were big and bulky. And that is sort of sometimes you have a similar thing going on in the truck business, electrification of trucks. Is that sort of the range is too short, but at the same time you see an increasing range extension. Up to sort of 300 kilometers. So I don't really see going forward. I would expect actually in a couple of years to have a range between 500 to 600 kilometers, which then means that it actually can be used for all kinds of commercial road transport, so both in a city distribution as well as the long haul transport. And that's of course important. Another thing, of course, and especially for the industry, is that we are nearing the TCO parity. The total cost of ownership for trucks is actually nearing this parity. We are still a couple of years away, and of course, For certain applications for road transport, it will be longer in the future than for other ones, but we see certain applications in the inner city distribution where it sort of really makes sense to use electric trucks. Not only just because of the TCO parity, but also the fact that there is regulation and people simply have to make that change. So these are all important factors. What does that really mean for truck charging facilities? I think it's fair to say if we look at truck charging that we are quite a way behind the personal car charging and the infrastructure which is already in place. At the same time, and it is sort of a research done by a Dutch company called ELAD, if you look at the electricity demand for trucks, it's really large. We have on the top right, you see the electricity demand per year. This is just for the Netherlands. And if you look at trucks, city distribution and international trucks, we're talking about 6.1 terawatt hour. So you go from watts, kilowatts, mega, giga, and then you end up with terawatts, compared to what is needed for cars being 7.8. So in a way, we need about 80% of the truck, or let's put it this way, 80% of the truck charging electricity demand is similar to the car. So I'm not saying that's right. So expected annual electricity demand for truck charging is at 80% of the total EV car charging demand. And while there's nothing there at the moment, I think that's really interesting to understand that it is a huge market. And if you look at, they've done some research on how many trucks are needed on the road in 2035, then they're already expecting 50,000 electric trucks on the road in the Netherlands alone. And that all of that needs a sort of a charging infrastructure. So there are several research reports on what do we need for truck charging, and people are talking about going from 37,000 in 2025 to 290,000 charging points in 2030. And I think another aspect here is that sometimes people think it's completely all DC, and I think that that's not completely sure. If you if you look at the capacity needed of charging points less than 100 kilowatts, that's actually the majority of the charging points. Maybe a couple of words then on why we think that truck parks are well positioned as leading charging locations. And I think it's sort of almost more of a summary of what we've already seen. There's a couple of aspects here as a background. First of all, and you're probably all aware of this, is that the limitation of truck parking across Europe is quite limited. And so we currently see a shortage of parking bays. ESPORG has been working on this as well, and they mention we need 400,000 parking bays, and there are only 300,000 available in the EU 27. That means actually we're a shortage of 100,000 parking bays already. Then we also need to think about parking a truck is not the same as parking a car. You can't just park a truck everywhere. So there is limited parking possibilities here. And you also know very well that there are very long lead times to create additional parking bays. It's not that you in a couple of months have a new large truck parking, that these things take years. Then another element here is that there is a large electricity demand, what we already have seen in the previous slides. McKinsey has a couple of things said about it. 1/3 of global diesel demand is by trucks. is almost 9% of global liquids oil demand and 3% of total global energy demand. So in other words, there is a large electricity demand, and especially if you want to make the transition to electric trucks. Then if you look at the transport sector in general, they of course are very much positioned that they would like to keep their logistical flows as much as possible the same. And of course that they would like to have certainty about charging. Similar certainty they have now about refueling at forecourts. So they need to be sure that there is as little change as possible in the logistics, and at the same time that they have the certainty. So what that means is that going forward, you will see very much a book park charge concept where people to charge, you will need to have the certainty that you can park somewhere, and you would like to have that certainty by booking something. And give you an example, no electric truck will leave the Netherlands to go, for example, to France without knowing at the end of the day that they can charge somewhere and they can park and they can book that in advance. So that's really important going forward. And another element here is that overnight parking can be sort of regarded as parking at home. And what I mean by that is that you have they are parked up overnight, so they are actually there for a much longer time. So the type of facilities you need could be similar to what you have at your own depot site, and the charging capacities could be lower than when you have to mimic a forecourt type of transaction where trucks have to be refilled within 5 minutes. To refill a truck, to recharge a truck within 5 minutes, you will need extreme high capacity and therefore extreme expensive infrastructure. So if you look at all those elements, then you could tick a lot of boxes for the truck parks, because in the first bit, the limited truck parking, you already have a truck parking and you already have a base and the people can park there. If you look at the large electricity demand, it doesn't really matter so much where. It's not a question of either or, it is a question, it needs to be everywhere at those truck parks. It needs to be at the depot charging, it needs to be at the distribution sites, it needs to be at the charging hub, but also at the truck parks. And if you look at the transport sector, you as a truck park operator are extremely well positioned to have already to make sure that the transport sector have as little change as possible. They're already parking at your parking, and also you can offer, to a certain extent, you can offer that certainty of charging by having a controlled system where you can book park charge at a existing location. And then there's of course the overnight parking which you already offer. So in conclusion, if the opportunity for truck park operators is there, what is the model of the charging model, which is or the refueling model, which is now at the forecourts, can be moved partly to the truck parking, and that could be a very interesting model. I want to also, in the interest probably of time, I want to move on to the second part. And that's also the refrigeration trailers, and that's also it's a current demand. And refrigeration trailers are a bit of a strange animal because it's actually not well known, but in effect, a refrigeration trailer with the cool unit is an electric trailer. They have a cool unit with an electric engine, but no battery. And because they don't have a battery, they have put in a diesel generator with a combustion engine, and they then all of a sudden are the most polluting part of the truck trailer combination. But you could almost, and we sometimes joke about that in the company. It is a bit like seeing a brand new Tesla driving around with a diesel generator on top of his roof because they forgot to install the batteries. There is an easy transition here to be made, and that's also what initially Nomad Power has built up. And what we also see for truck park operators as a stepping stone towards what we have been talking about regarding the truck charging. So as I mentioned, electric trailer cooling, because of the fact that it is already an electric engine, we don't really see that there's a lot of cost to be made to change. So it's in a way an easy switch. They're all equipped with those power sockets. 95%, I think it's even 98%, have this power outlet and can simply plug in and use electricity, and then save up to 10 tons of CO2 emissions per trailer per year, just by being parked there, and not even talking about the times that they are driving. And that then offers, especially for the parking, a clean, quiet, and cheap cooling. So we talked about some of the benefits. I think if you look at the benefits for refrigeration trailer charging, it is actually even more twofold. It's not only about having a sort of an opportunity for recharging, but it's also there to reduce noise and pollution at the parking. Because in a way, the refrigeration trailers at night, everybody is parked up, are the only engines running the whole night and polluting the area and causing a lot of noise and disturbance for drivers, but also the surroundings. As Nomad Power, we really promoted a complete self-service system and sort of a pay-per-use business model. So we're not saying like the installation of the chargers is sort of a cost. It's a bit like your lights or your everywhere where you need to, or your fencing. It's actually could be something which is sort of which generates income for you as a truck park operator. At the same time, we see a lot of clients interested in making that switch, whether that's benefiting for the drivers, or whether they want to save costs, or whether they are under pressure from their suppliers and to use the electric cooling. As a parking, you could also say like, okay, you reduce your carbon footprint and you support the sustainable transport. And I think it's really interesting to have the infrastructure ready in place and to be more prepared for the electric truck charging that will come. So you're actually more future ready, and I wouldn't be surprised if we already see that now in the parking standards that future regulation will move to the inclusion of these charging infrastructure for refrigeration trailers. A little bit about what we're building as Nomad Power. It has been, by definition, it's a European label. We're talking about international road transport, people going from the Netherlands to Italy, Scotland to Germany, parking overnight. We managed to have now about 5,000 subscriptions with 800 registered companies there. It's a very modern way, self-service way of activating services, multi-language, with then also a separate portal for owners. Sometimes it makes more sense to let the client speak a bit. So I'm going to show you this short movie by Essos and the way they have sort of embraced Nomad Power. So that was one of our clients, assets, explaining how they use NOMAD Power. I thought that would hopefully give you an idea of how easy the system is and how it can be used in all kinds of different countries. As I mentioned, we initially set up our network with support of the European Union under the 10T program, initially launching in 5 countries. And currently we built the network in 9 different countries, and obviously we are really eager to expand the network to all kinds of different locations, whether that's sort of along the motorways at the truck parks, but we're concentrating on logistics hubs and own depot sites. And for our clients, of course, there's a strength in the network. The more points they can use NOMAD Power, the better it is for them, and the easier they would be convinced also to make the switch to electric cooling. Our partners initially were sort of large truck park operators. That's why, because initially this network needed to be set up quite quickly. So we got together with partners like Euroraspark, Motor Hospitality in the UK, Autostrada del Brennero in Italy, 24 Autohof in Germany, and Linus Logistics as the cold store operator. And with them, we built the initial network. If you look at the clients, they are 15% of all road transport is refrigerated road transport, but within that refrigeration, there's a wide variety of goods they transport. So our clients are ranging from large pharmaceutical companies like SS, VTS, Smechel, and it's always dangerous that you forget people here, of course, and then meat transport, and also supermarket distribution to people who actually needed to heat tankers like Van der Bos, for example, to transport chocolate. There's also quite a variety of clients. Some of them are quite large. Some of them are own drivers or small companies. To us, it's all the same. Everybody's welcome. Just sign up to NOMAD Power and use it in the whole of Europe. We're probably going to go to a point which hopefully is of interest to you here. It's a bit more about sort of how do you really build your infrastructure on site. First of all, we sort of designed 50 locations across Europe, so we've come across all kinds of challenges and sort of ways of setting up the infrastructure. We have an experienced team locally, also development team within Europe, and also local installation partners who can help with this setup. We put quite some experience with the hardware manufacturers. We are independent from hardware manufacturers, but at the same time, you notice that some hardware providers are better equipped to make what we're looking for than others. So we found with our partner Seisner Technique sort of a really good price quality ratio. And that's also where the one is sort of our preferred supplier in this. There's a lot about communications. In all those countries, we need to be able to communicate with the chargers, and that has a lot of expertise. That all expertise sits within our mother company called Involtam, and they also operate the whole transaction platform and take care of the payments. And then, of course, as I already mentioned, there's no cards or local transactions needed. It's all done by app and website, as you could see in the video. And then, of course, we arrange, we take care of the operator portal for admin and monitoring on your side as truck park operator. Going into a little bit more detail, what is really needed without being too technical. In a way, if you look at your how we normally start in these type of projects, we look at the truck parking, and that could be a new one, could be an extension of an existing one, could be just an existing one, and we first of all look at how big the parking is, how many parking bays you have, what type of refrigerated road transport visitors you have, and then in general you will look at between 5 and 10% of the total parking base will then hopefully be getting ready for electric cooling. So in this example, we look at this parking. We say, for example, we have a project for 6 power pedestals. Each pedestal always have 2 sockets, so you're talking in total about 12 sockets, and they will be placed in a position, preferably behind the base, or if not possible, between the base. But when you place them between the base, you obviously lose some space on the side, and you lose parking base, which most operators are not in favor of. So what we look then as well as number 2, we look at where the main distribution cabinet is, and we trying to be as close as possible to that main distribution. And why is that? Is that basically the cost of installation are twofold. Is first of all is the hardware, is basically the pedestals, the road signs and stuff like that. And secondly is the installation and the civil works to be done, and the cables which need to be laid. So the closer you are to the distribution board, the cheaper the whole project will be. So that's quite an important point. We also look at the way what type of power is available. So spare capacity, what type of spare capacity is available on site. And for example, to give you an idea, in this project, you need about 240 amp or 160 kVA to operate 12 sockets. So that needs to be available, or that needs to be sort of be able to be sort of upgraded to that type of level. So that's always an important first point to look at it. If you look at number 3, then what needs to be done, of course, the pedestals need to be placed. They need sort of instruction signs. You will need protection bollards around them to make sure that you don't have any collision damage. And you would like to make the base quite separate from and standing out from the other base by sort of painting them and reserving them for the charging. And then finally, it's always good to have certain road marking and signage towards the NOMAD power base, so that drivers can easily find them, and all the drivers also know that these are specific base for NOMAD power. So that's how we operate. Normally, we talk to the truck park operators, and we advise them in this whole process. If you look at the people always, of course, want to know, is there a certain business model behind it, and how do you guys work? In a way, there are 2 business models possible, and we have done both of them. One model could be simply that NOMAD Power is called the servicing model, and NOMAD Power will be a servicing operator at your truck park. That sort of means that the truck park operator needs to pay and own the charging infrastructure, and then NOMAD Power and truck park operator agree a servicing contract under which NOMAD Power operates all the charging facilities. And that also means that all the net revenues from the charging will be paid back to the truck park operator, and that's then sort of a business model for the truck park operator, which we call a servicing model. There's also a model, or let me say that model A we can always offer. Model B is slightly different model, is that we're saying like, okay, we're an external it's more of an external operating model. And thereby we take a slightly different stance, is that we as Nomad Power will sort of operate the charging services. So what we do is that we sign in a long-term operating contract with you as a truck park operator. And long-term, I mean normally 10 years plus, where we agree that we provide the services at your truck parking. That means actually that we will be, in effect, operating the complete business model here, and we will pay you the cost price of electricity plus small margin to cover your costs for your existing electricity contracts. This model we can operate, of course, if we feel that the location will be benefiting to our network, and that we feel like it is sort of an interesting operation for us. Because for us, if we run this model, it will for us needs to be a business model. Well, we don't really necessarily have the additional benefits you have for noise reduction and emissions and so forth. So you could see it more as a combined model. For us, it needs to be just as a buying or selling of electricity in a way. And then I think there also sometimes if you go along this road, there's certain hybrid models where we sharing the cost and the benefits of the charging, but that needs to be discussed case by case. To go a bit more, give you some insight in the servicing model and our charges, but also the revenues for you. We are looking at two ways. We're looking at monitoring activation, so that is actually providing the services that everybody can activate the pedestals and having all kind of customer service and communication around that. And that is €5 per electricity connection point, so per socket. And then there's a pay-per-use payment model for third-party users or for users of Nomad Power. And then this will be, in general, if you calculate that, you will come to the current selling price, which is 39€. We have a monthly, we have a charge per kilowatt hour between 3 and 5€, and that very much depends on whether we face also the non-payment risk and another couple of other aspects. And that then means that you will run your model based on your cost of electricity. So assume you have a cost of electricity of 18€. You will also then, this will result in a margin for you of 18€ per kilowatt hour sold. And that's then also your business model. I'm coming towards the end of the presentation, and yeah, hopefully we're on time here. I'm sure there will be some questions here, but to wrap up is that both in the refrigeration as well as the e-truck charging, we see a real business model for truck park operators, and especially when the e-truck and the launch and the introduction of that one will accelerate. And I think we see also that is really truck park operators need to really think about how they can capture part of that market, and complete refueling market, which is completely dominated at forecourts, can now come as a recharging model to your parking. And that is something will be completely new, but could be a very interesting new business model besides of the current business model of parking and type of restaurant services people are offering, and of course the security. So I feel like there's a real business opportunity here over the next years, and we are, of course, as Nomad Power, would like to grow with you and extend this network and build out our network together with you as a truck park operator. And that's also why we wanted to be part of ESPORG and the ESPORG family, as I said it. I'm going to leave the floor for questions and answers, and I will stop this and this sharing. Christy, back to you if you want to sort of deal with the questions and answers.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to, you can either raise your hand and then I'll call on you basically so that we're not all talking at once, or you can put it in the chat. And I know that Derek wanted to say something. So Derek, while I'm starting with the questions, why don't you go ahead and say what you wanted to say? Oh, Derek, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank all the participants to attending the workshop. I also want to thank that Nomad Power, with their knowledge and know-how, is a partner from ESPORG. It's going to be very useful, and I think in the future we're standing just at the beginning of a new experience, and the name is sustainable and also decarbonization. I think we have a long way to go, but it's important for ESPORG side that we inform our members with the most accurate and valuable information. I also think this is the first workshop and definitely not the last, because the whole transition from the fuels and everything that we're looking now to decarbonization, to green energy, is a pathway that's just starting. And I think also that it's important that we're sitting and helping you from the first line with the vision, and also how practical implement those things, that you're doing the right investment and the right infrastructure on the right moment. So for that, that's only what I can tell you, and I'm happy that we as ESPORG can support you in those things. And I think there's coming a following up session in the near future. When you have questions, when you need more information, also individual for your parking, please let Christy know, or me, and also the guys from Nomad Power, and we can help you. And I think also it's important for people, they're building new parkings, but they already can implementing the things on a practical way to provide infrastructures to don't have additional costs in the future. Because also in the e-parking standard, it's not for the coming years, because the new standard is going to publish, I think, beginning of February, because we have a waiting time for 30 days, but it's passing the parliament and also the county, so it's coming. But switch for trucks and plugs in is a topic for in 2-3 years. So keep you informed, and like I said, when there's something else, please contact us, and I'm happy for the professional information that Nobel been giving to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Derek. So we have a question for you, Hans, from the chat from Dieter. He asks, when do you expect full electric, so no diesel, refrigerated trailers in the market?
Well, it's funny because I think one of the guys really pushing this is even in this call with both Carrier as well as Thermo King are really now busy making this energy transition, and they have sort of launched models, especially Carrier, to be a sort of a fully electric journey. And I think that's being sort of most of the time being, and the various other manufacturers. But I think it's being, in a way, it's threefold. And what they will try to do is that to reduce the diesel generator, you will need a couple of things. Probably you will need, or you will need a battery capacity. And then you will also probably have a connection, kinetic energy from while driving, because what we said is that, like, it's not that when they're standing still, it's just basically when they're driving, they use the diesel generator as well. So the first step is probably to make also to move from a agricultural type of non-regulated auxiliary engine to a Euro 6 certified truck engine. So if you use kinetic energy, you make that transition. So that's one. Then you probably start introducing battery technology. When the battery technology, in my view, is sort of improving, then you probably will have to go to full battery type of trailers. And then you will also need charging facilities, not only for direct power, what you see now for refrigeration trailers, but you will also have sort of a charging element for those refrigeration trailers. That's how I see it, but I'm more than happy to hear from people who are sort of making them as well.
Okay, I have another question from Alexandra. When do you plan to develop your charging network in France?
Well, very good question. We always try to hide the spot in France by putting our logo there, but we are very much in discussion with the larger providers in France, with Vinci, APRR. They're all looking into it now. We have a first site at the border with Belgium and France, or just in France. So that's going to be our first location in France. But we very much realize that there are locations missing in France, and we will solve that. I think we were slightly unlucky when we initially built the network. We were under a lot of time pressure to get it done. That's also why we had these larger truck park operators, what I mentioned, and at the time we couldn't find the right one in France, so that's why we have a bit of a delay in France. But it's certainly not that it's not. It's one of our main priorities to get something in France. So I actually expect something this year really to happen in France. There's a lot of focus as well in France on it now.
Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. We have another question from Carlo. He asks, do you have a local contact in Italy? They have just started to deal with Bosch secured truck parking, and he says it would make sense to have a follow-up.
Yeah, we have a very experienced business developer, Italian lady, Giulia, and she is more than happy to speak to them. And explain what we have done with Autostrade del Brennero, but also with various large truck park and transport companies in Italy. So I'll bring him into contact with Giulia.
Okay, perfect. We have a question from Ferdi. Do you think it'll be possible in the future to book parking and power in one booking session, so that there's no time lost, and then one invoice with that?
Yeah, no, very good question. Because I sort of said that in these three words, book, park, charge. In our view, if you look at where as a company in Voltem, where we really see the future of commercial charging, whether that's truck charging, whether that's for large shipping industry, whether that's in any other charging, it simply needs to be a certainty that you can charge. Where if you look at car charging, you can basically everywhere park your car, and then you probably in the end find a charger. If you go from A to B in a truck, you're simply not going to leave without making sure that you can park something and that you have the access, that you can charge. So we are very much putting a lot of focus on this, and I think that's something we need to discuss with ESPORG as well, because the reservation bit at the parking will be really essential to make a charging work. Otherwise, it's impossible. And Ferdi is right in this. He will have huge problems to really, with his logistical flows, if he can't really have the certainty that he can sort of book park charge. And so that will be a really important topic. And truck parks need to sort of be sure that they really understand that bit. But again, see it as an opportunity, because you can offer this. You are an enclosed space. You already have your entry barriers. It should be the easiest way for truck park operators to really offer this type of book park charge element.
Okay. All right. And Julia has a question. Are the charging units you currently install built to supply sufficient energy to future e-trucks, or are they just designed for current refrigerated trailer demands?
Yeah, also good. We have to be clear indeed that the demand needed to charge e-trucks will be higher than what we have in place now. Having said that, refrigeration trailers, they're not really slow sockets. They are 32 three-phase power sockets with a decent capacity. But we will probably need to upgrade to a higher capacity. Having said that, I think if you look at the way trucks will charge, then in one way it might be sort of a forecourt activity where people expect the same speed of charging what they have in refueling now, which will demand huge capacities, DC type of capacities. That will be an application. But there is an opportunity here for truck parks where basically people are parked by law for 9 to most of the time 10 hours, to use this whole 10 hours to charge their electric truck. So you might need a slightly higher capacity than you will have for the refrigeration trailers, but will not be the ultra fast type of charges you will need for forecourt charging. And that opportunity, that's what I meant before in the presentation as being charging away from home. It's almost like home charging you do away from home.
Okay, thank you. And Dietrich, just to go back to your question, I saw in the chat that Igor answered and said that they have those full electric trailers available with them now, so that you see the answer. Okay, that's all the questions in the chat for now. Does anyone?
I think Igor has a question or would like to reply on that.
Go for it.
No, I just wanted to confirm because Hans, when you mentioned it, I was on mute. I was saying something, and once I found the mute button, you started talking again. But yeah, I wanted to confirm that at Carrier we have actually full electric trailer, no diesel, available. So the system with the battery, the energy axle, is called the e-cool.
I can also say something about that. Also, ESPORG there is involved in studies about electrical driving for trucks with the Duisburg University. But I think not one standalone like ESPORG or NOMAD or the lorry companies, they're driving electrical, can solve the problem. You have to go for a common strategy where everybody create a win-win situation, not only at a financial way, but also in a practical way. So I think that's key, and also learning by doing and putting the pain points open, that we can look and try to find solutions for those things, because the process is just starting. It's just the beginning of the trip that we're going on, like parkings in the 2007 when I started with that. So here we have to go with one pathway together and communicate together to come to solutions and practical implementations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would like to add to that is that we sort of from a NOMAD Power point of view, we very much see the refrigeration trailers and the charging and the sort of the current demand, we probably use that as a stepping stone towards the e-truck infrastructure. So as a truck parking, you could already run a business model using the refrigeration trailers, and then get the experience on board to then also move into facilities or combined facilities for e-trucks. So you could, for example, think that if you have 12 sockets and you have 240 amps available, then you could easily install also a DC charger, which can be used during the day, or 2 DC chargers during the day for e-truck charging, while you operate your refrigeration charging model at night. So these type of combinations are also possible, or you offer it for light commercial vehicles during the day, and they visit you for a couple of hours to visit the restaurant and recharge. And all these type of models, there might be hybrid models possible, but if you already start with the refrigeration model, then you can operate the current model, and you can gain an advantage over some other people who don't really have that combination.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Does anyone have any other questions? I see that there's no more in the chat, but if anybody has to say anything else, feel free.
I think, but it's just, but I think the time point what we're going to set up for the future is to have 2027. Then we're going to be more or less mandatory to have electrical plug-in on the parkings. So there we have
that's within the parking standards now, proposal.
Yeah, it's not fixed, but it's coming into the 2027. It's the date that we propose now, because everybody have also to prepare and do the practical things.
Yeah.
But they not keeping you from to be now already thinking of the future. Right? We don't have to wait until 2027.
No, again, in 27, that makes sense for existing parkers. If you want to implement it, you give people time to really install those. I would add to that, if I was building a new truck parking, you would almost try to really have that already in, or have the ducts there, and then do the preparation, because it's always more expensive afterwards to install these type of facilities than during the build. So it would almost be that you make a distinction between existing parkings and new ones.
Okay, and I see Dietrich also put something else in the chat about the CEE 32A sockets, that they can be used for e-car charging using a standard adapter each e-car user has. That's not a question. I think that's just a statement. So just to add that. And he says,
that probably that model might be of interest for commercial or light commercial vehicles, because I think we come back to the fact that your truck and the larger vehicles can't really be parked everywhere. So for them to park somewhere and to charge is going to be quite specific. So if you can offer a slightly different model for light commercial vehicles, which are bigger than the personal charging base, that they can use it during the day, that could be quite interesting.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions. So I just want to thank Hans, especially for his wonderful presentation and all the information. And thank you to all of you for participating. If anybody does have more questions, you have my email, you have Hans' email, I think. So feel free to ask, and hopefully we will be able to put you in touch, and the recording will be available after as well. Hans, did you want to say anything else?
No, thanks all for joining. And as mentioned, I'm available to look at quite site-specific installations, or explain more where we're heading to. But again, it's the start of a journey. We just joined ESPORG, and we're more than happy to get to know you guys, all of you. Thanks for joining.
I want to thank you for attending, and like I said before, this is the first meeting, and there will be more after. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Thank you.